all, thank you so much to everyone for joining us today at this webinar. Cassidy and I are super excited to share a little bit about Generation Z. So a little quick introduction. My name is Lauren Hall.
And I'm Cassidy Hem.
And we are both researchers here at Market Vision Research. I am a moderator on our qualitative team, and Cassidy specializes in our quantitative research services. For those who may not be familiar with Market Vision Research, we are a full-service custom research firm based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, where we serve a vast array of clients in different industries. However, beyond our day-to-day project work, we also take a lot of pride in conducting our own internal research around hot industry topics. There's none hotter right now, other than maybe arguably AI, than learning about Generation Z. And so in this presentation today, not only will you have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about this generation, but you get to hear these insights directly from two members who are within Generation Z. So that's pretty exciting and unique. Additionally, because this is such a hot topic, there are bound to be questions along the way. As a qualitative moderator, I have tons of questions all the time, so we totally get it. If you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and utilize the Q&A feature. It should be located either at the top of your screen or at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to throw any questions you may have along the way, and our colleague Allison will go ahead and help us relay those questions, and we'll be sure that they're addressed at the end of each section within our presentation. Additionally, today in this forum, we are sharing our screen, recording, as well as sharing video. So in order to enhance your view of the presentation, as well as help with any video lag that we may encounter along the way, Cassidy and I will go ahead and turn off our cameras in order to help with the technology piece. But without further ado, we will go ahead and dive into our discussion. So first, to kick things off, it's time to be real. If you haven't heard of this popular app, it is a social media platform in which users will receive a random notification at some point in time within their day, prompting them to take a front as well as back photo of whatever they may be doing in that particular moment. But here's the catch that makes this social media app so special and unique, is that there's no filters, there's no curating, and it's just the real you. This app is particularly popular amongst Generation Z because this generation is all about keeping things real. I'm sure all of us have heard who Taylor Swift is these days, and so to put it in her words, you could say that this generation is in their authenticity era, which makes a lot of sense because this generation grew up surrounded by social media, the internet, etc., and lots of filters within their everyday life. So within our presentation today, we plan to keep it real with you all and share the good, the bad, and even ugly on this key generation. So now I'll turn it over to Cassidy to kick us off.
So for this research, we set out to talk to Gen Z directly. We really wanted to get an understanding of who they are beyond the shadow of millennials, beyond the stereotypes, and beyond the filter. During our time together today, we're hoping that you have a couple key takeaways. The first is, who is Gen Z and what is their influence on our culture? The next being, what are the different types of relationships that Gen Z has with different brands and what motivates those relationships? And then finally, how to effectively engage and interact with Gen Z on various social media platforms. So to uncover these learnings, we started off by conducting a variety of different qualitative methodologies. These included Discord discussion boards, GroupMe group chats, focus groups, and virtual web-based IDIs in order to explore this topic. Then, based off those qualitative learnings, we then developed an online questionnaire with a sample size of over 650 to put some numbers behind some of these key insights. We're going to go ahead and dive into understanding who is Gen Z. So we can't discuss Gen Z without first calling out the obvious. This generation are digital natives. They're uniquely the first generation to grow up completely surrounded by technology and social media starting at a very young age. Now, it is because this point about technology is so unique compared to other generations that it may be one of the first things that you often think of when it comes to defining Gen Z. Similarly to this use of technology, Gen Z believes that there are many preconceived notions that other generations have drummed up about them. Let's see what Gen Z thinks that other generations would say about their main character energy from the lens of an Instagram post. As they say on TikTok, to the comments.
Too busy adulting. Hashtag humble brag.
When I was your age, I had to roll up my sleeves and I had to put in the work. You expect everything handed to you. Hashtag entitled, hashtag young, dumb, and broke.
Always on their phones, just like those millennials.
Okay, boomer. Rolling my eyes emoji.
Now, for any Gen Zers on the phone, does that sound true or ring familiar to any of you?
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is.
Allow us to reintroduce ourselves. Although Gen Z will admit that there is some truth about this usage of technology, there's more to this generation than what meets the eye. We're going to take this opportunity to understand how Gen Z is coming in hot to push boundaries, to test limits, and to cultivate change. So what really has shaped Gen Z into who they are today? We're going to take a moment to hear from one of our respondents about what Gen Z has to say about their experience growing up.
The thing that I have thought about before is that we've never lived in like a safe world. Like I was born after 9/11, so like people are like, you had no idea what that was like. I was like, you have no idea what it was like growing up knowing that could happen, and like living in eras of like I was in the 5th grade when Sandy Hook happened. I remember being at school, and I think that we're different because generations before had this like idyllic childhood where it was like everything was perfect and then this terrible thing happened, and we've grown up like, oh, 9/11 is just like a history thing that we learn about, and it was like everyone around us has a memory and a story from it, or like we're like we've always grown up knowing that we could get shot up at school. Like that sucks. So I think that we sometimes get talked down to, but my retort is always like, you have no idea what it's like never being in a safe like environment.
Gen Z is on high alert as they grew up in an unsafe world, as this individual explains. This completely makes sense as this generation experienced events like 9/11, Sandy Hook, George Floyd, Uvalde, senseless crime, social media scams, intense political division, and much more. Now, granted, other generations have also faced horrible tragedies and societal challenges, but the main difference from the other generations, for Gen Z, the details of these events are on full display 24/7, with news coming from multiple different directions and multiple different sources swarming social media feeds. It's overwhelming, it's constant, and it takes a toll. Now, on the brighter side of being digital natives, Gen Z is a globalized generation, which allows them to take their connectivity beyond their specific neighborhoods and into the broader world. It is through this lens that they're able to be exposed to diverse people, cultures, and perspectives. And that ultimately allows them to cultivate their desire to be inclusive and open-minded as a generation. It's through this increased exposure that Gen Z has also been conditioned to navigate and embrace rapid change. They're constantly trying to adjust to new technologies, evolve with different social and cultural landscapes, and coming up with innovative ways to connect and interact with others. Nevertheless, living in this constant state of change has imposed significant stress and pressure upon Gen Z, as they're constantly striving to keep up and stay ahead of the ever-evolving curve. Gen Z is stressed, no cap. 84% of Gen Z feel stress or pressure stemming mainly from things like finances, mental health, work, trying to live up to expectations, and sometimes the stress even comes from their own family. And this really isn't just about their current state. This stress and pressure is also embedded in how this generation views the future. We're surprised in our research to see that among the top 7 feelings expressed by Gen Z, none of them were positive. Worried, anxious, stressed, scared, afraid, confused, pessimistic. It really just goes to show that there's more to Gen Z than what meets the eye. So with all of this in mind, we also asked Gen Z to select the 3 words that they would use to reflect how other generations would describe them, and then also the 3 words that they would use to describe themselves. We found it very amusing to discover that not only does Gen Z think other generations find them annoying, but they also find themselves to be annoying. Additionally, from all the stress and pressure, they're kind of viewed as a depressed generation from other generations and then also amongst themselves. Now, on a more positive note, Gen Z represents a wonderfully diverse generation. They really grew up in that globalized world, and they exhibit immense passion for a wide variety of different topics, which they're not shy in vocalizing. So now that we understand Gen Z a little bit better, let's take a moment to understand what does all that mean for brands. The first thing is to take Gen Z seriously. This generation should not be underestimated or dismissed. They represent the next target market with a purchasing power of $143 billion. These individuals are savvy, they're intelligent, and they're a force to be reckoned with. The next thing that brands should do is to earn Gen Z's trust. Gen Z is naturally a skeptical generation. And it really makes sense that they are, because they're living in a world full of scams, misinformation, and inauthenticity. Now, similar to their expectations of individuals, Gen Z highly values authenticity from brands. They want brands who are going to do what they say they will do, and be who that they say that they are. And finally, keep up. Brands need to meet Gen Z's expectations by keeping up and keeping pace. They must genuinely embrace diversity in real and authentic ways, because surface level efforts just are not going to cut it with this generation. Additionally, brands need to continually search for ways to stay fresh and relevant to ensure that their products and services are presented in consumable ways to meet Gen Z where they are. So this kind of wraps up this first section. And before moving on to the next section, we'd like to take a brief pause to see if there are any questions about who Gen Z is and what has shaped them into who they are today. Feel free to pop in and use the chat function, and our colleague Allison will relay the questions to us.
Thanks, Cassidy, for that great content. I'll hang on just a minute here and see if there are any questions. All right, it looks like we've got one. And this one says, as a member of Gen Z yourself, what was most surprising for you to learn about your generation?
Yeah, I think one thing that we kind of mentioned in this section was just the negative feelings of stress and pressure that are kind of contributing to Gen Z in their day-to-day lives, which I think makes sense, just being part of that generation and kind of seeing all those expectations popping up around you all of the time on social media and whatnot. But I think something that surprised me, at least personally, was that those feelings kind of translate over to the future, and how this generation is viewing their future, and then also kind of just how things are coming up moving forward for them. So I think that was one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit throughout this research.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Cassidy. To piggyback off of that a little bit, I think I, even as a member of Gen Z, was really surprised at how stressed and pressured we are. And I think some of that comes from maybe some of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, because all of us had to take a pause during that time. But I think that especially for this generation, they were at a really vulnerable time in their life, where they're really kind of in that stage of discovering who they are, that self-discovery phase, as well as hitting some of those key milestones that they have in their life. So I think we see that carried over now into even post-pandemic, of a lot of us feel very behind in our achievements and never feel like we're quite doing enough. And some of that might be impacted by social media and seeing what other people have been able to accomplish. But I think that it causes kind of this constant state of how do we manage this? How do we navigate this? And I think that contributes to a lot of stress and pressure that we're experiencing as a generation. And I know I have felt stress and pressure in my life, but was surprised to see how that was collective with the generation.
Thanks, Cassidy and Lauren. I believe this is a question in reference to what you both just spoke to. And it says, do you think perhaps Gen Z is just more vocal and open about their stress and pressures than others?
Yeah, I think that that's an excellent question. So I definitely do think that Gen Z as a whole is just more open and honest about sharing some of these feelings. Additionally, I think that they have the means to share and openly share these feelings on a broader scale. So if you think of other generations in the past who might not have had, these really advanced social media avenues at their fingertips, they didn't have that capability to share some of these feelings. So other generations for sure probably experienced similar stresses and pressures as they were navigating and self-discovering who they are. But now Gen Z has, social media to openly share all of these feelings, as well as I think that there is a little bit more added pressure with kind of this constant state of having social media at their fingertips, because it's a constant, self kind of system in getting all of this information at one time. So there are the little nuances between that, but stress and pressure is definitely something Gen Z is experiencing at a heightened rate.
Great, thank you. We've got one more question in here. Is an interest in authenticity unique to this generation or a function of youth?
Great question. Great question. I would say with this generation that authenticity is something that is very unique to this generation on a scale that I don't think we've ever seen before with other means. This is something that Gen Z is particularly very specific about because they grew up as digital natives. So they're ingrained to have a sense of this skepticism. I think is even more than other generations because of social media as well as the internet, just technology as a whole, because there's a lot of scams out there. And Gen Z notices these scams. I think that they've been, they've had these scams affect them on a personal level. And so there's all of this skepticism around what is being put out there. So I think authenticity is something that they're looking for from brands on a heightened level to be able to kind of navigate and peruse what is really real out there and what is kind of cultivated and not truly authentic to the brand or individual, etc. Any other questions? These are all great. Thank you so much.
I think those are all of the questions that we have at this time.
All right, great. Well, we will keep trucking along here. We have lots more to share, so we'll make sure to get through all of it for you guys. We have video in this, so I'm going to stop my video. All right. So thank you, Cassidy, so much for walking us through a little bit about who Generation Z is. But now we want to dive into what types of relationships does Gen Z have with brands and are looking for in the brands that they are interacting with. So like any qualitative individual, I'm always curious and asking lots of questions. And so one of my first questions kind of diving into this topic would be, what is Generation Z looking for when entering a relationship with a brand? And so to help kind of bring this to life, we created kind of the lens of an online dating post and exploring what Gen Z is looking for as they enter these relationships. So let's take a look.
Hey, I'm Gen Z, and I'm new to the conversation. I would describe myself as creative, upbeat, and open-minded. You can count on me to keep it 100 and tell it like it is. Between work and school, you can find me hanging out with friends, playing video games, working out, and exploring new things. I'm looking for brands who are down to earth, have a sense of humor, and understand me for who I am. Hashtag not here to play games.
So there gives us a little bit of a glimpse of who Gen Z is and kind of what they're looking for in entering these relationships. But we also wanted to explore further in what brands Gen Z would put into the following relationship status categories. So we asked Gen Z to think of examples of brands that fall into situationships, forever relationships, breakup brands, as well as crush brands. So just like on any online dating platform, let's go ahead and swipe right on Generation Z and explore these types of relationships. So the first relationship we will dive into is what's called a situationship. In dating lingo, this is the process of lining up backup dates in case your current relationship may end. Typically, what we found is brands that fall into this category are often seen as trendy or popular in the moment, but Gen Z acknowledges that there's likely something else better that's out there or better that's yet to come. Often we see this trend in industries that are ever evolving, such as technology, as well as clothing. A few examples of brands that fall within this category included Lululemon, Chick-fil-A, and Amazon. So due to time today, we will go ahead and dive into one particular example of how Lululemon fits within this situationship category. So one of Gen Z's mottos when it comes to these situationship relationships is trendy first, dupe second. Now, I know some of you may be thinking to yourself, Lauren, what's a dupe? Don't worry, I got you covered. Dupe is really simple Gen Z slang of it's short for duplicate. So, for example, Lululemon comes out with a lot of different trendy clothing items that everyone wants. They're super trendy in the moment. But then as time kind of passes, there are other companies who may come out with duplicate products that look very similar, such as the sweatshirt you see on screen. And these products are more affordable for Generation Z while still allowing them to be on trend. So to kind of overarchingly summarize this, Gen Z isn't necessarily cheating on your brand within these relationships, but they aren't willing to say that they're exclusive with your brand either. And the next relationship we'll go ahead and dive into are forever brands. So these are brands that Gen Z loves and could never live without. You could say they've been their A1 since day one. And so these brands are often ones in which they've made a lasting, positive, and sometimes even a personal impact on Generation Z. Additionally, they are really hard to fire because they have high quality. Also, they have an ability to stay relevant, and they also include high switching costs. Examples of brands that Generation Z let us know fall into this category included Nike, YouTube, as well as Apple. But my question was, what are these brands doing that's currently winning with Generation Z and making it more of a forever type of thing? So what we uncovered is just like any relationship, the most fulfilling ones occur when we can truly empathize with one another and build deeper relationships. So we're going to take a moment here to listen to some of our Gen Z consumers to understand how they believe in their perspective, how they can build these meaningful connections with them when things are for the better with a brand and even when things are for worse. So let's take a look.
In high school, our like affiliate brand with like our basketball team was Nike. Like we got those like sponsored shirts, sponsored shorts, sponsored like shoes, stuff like that. And you kind of just like, at least me, I kind of just like followed that through, and now I don't want to use anything else. Like I still play sports, I still run. Every time I replace my shoes, it has to be Nike. I won't consider anything else. I feel like I'm gonna hurt myself if I don't use anything else. Everything like matches. Yeah, it's a brand that like never let me down, so I don't see a reason to switch.
So I think what this underscores here is this consumer talks about having brands that never let you down is truly important in order to establish trust within that relationship, as well as drive their consumer loyalty. But no brand is perfect. So what happens when there are mistakes? What can brands still do to build these meaningful connections with these consumers? Let's take a look at this example.
Like they called me and like spoke to me because I was really upset about whatever happened, and like it just felt like I was talking to a real person that they cared about my issue. Okay. Like in particular, the situation is I was really broke and it was exam week and they messed up my food, and I was really upset about it because I didn't have $7. Like so, yeah, that, like I felt like somebody actually cared.
So in this example, we can see that this consumer, who is a financially struggling college student with only $7 left in his bank account, had his Chipotle order messed up in the height of exam week. So not a great situation. However, despite the mistake, Chipotle still was able to seize the opportunity with their consumer by providing excellent customer service, empathizing with his situation, as well as taking action to rectify the mistake. And so what this really highlights here is Gen Z wants to be more than just a mere statistic to your brand. They really want to see that you genuinely care about fulfilling their needs, even when things go wrong. And then when it comes to breakup brands, we discovered that this is rather complicated. At the start of this research, Cassie and I had hypothesized that since Gen Z is so vocal about their opinions and beliefs, we thought that they were going to have clear-cut, definitive breakups with brands. Yet, what we learned is that it's a little bit more complicated than that, and they rather have what's called a soft breakup with a brand. So just like putting ourselves into a real relationship situation, there are reasons why Gen Z initially developed an affinity for these brands. However, what's soft about this breakup is as they grow up and as their needs start to evolve, these brands become less and less and less relevant to them, which ultimately equates to this soft breakup. A few examples of brands that fell into this category, included Shein and Forever 21. And so while these brands are still seen as trendy, affordable options, they're really no longer in line with Gen Z's values, their ethical values, or their expectation when it comes to quality. And so as we can see here in this example, like as Gen Z is starting to mature and as their disposable income is starting to increase, they're much more inclined to start new relationships with brands that are sustainably sourced, as well as have a higher quality in which Gen Z can ultimately see a long-term relationship with these brands. But there are some common breakup texts if you find yourself and your brand kind of in this soft breakup zone to be aware of and on the lookout for. And so the first text is, "We've grown apart." And this is really just meaning that the brand is no longer evolving to meet Generation Z's needs. Another text may include, "It's not you, it's me," meaning that there might be financial reasons Gen Z can't be in a relationship with you right now, or the timing just isn't right for them. And lastly, we have irreconcilable differences, meaning that their values may no longer be aligned with your brands, either socially, politically, or even ethically. But as we learned, not all hope is lost. There is room for brands to be a John Cusack and get back together with Generation Z. We learned that Gen Z is willing to forgive and forget through a pretty simple equation, but they really want to see that the brands who find themselves in this stage provide a genuine apology, as well as just give it some time. There's much more research to explore in this space, but that's a simple equation to put in perspective. And then lastly, we have crush brands. So these are brands that Gen Z doesn't currently have a relationship with, but would like to have a relationship with in the future. Often these brands are seen as more luxury, as well as almost out of Generation Z's league, as they might be without the budget scope of Generation Z, or they don't quite fit in to their exact lifestyle just yet. Examples of brands that fell into this category included Louis Vuitton, Tiffany & Co., and Dyson. Now, when I saw these results, I thought to myself, hashtag bougie. I was pretty surprised, but I say that with a caveat that we did talk to a variety of different Gen Zers in both high income as well as low income brackets. But despite these financial differences, they all perceive these brands to be within their aspirational reach. But like any good researcher, we wanted to explore more. And so one of our questions was, how do these brands make their relationship more than just a crush with Generation Z? And so the first is that these brands can acknowledge that there is a gap between where they may be operating and where Generation Z is currently at. However, what we explored is that there are opportunities for these brands to make specific products or services that are better meeting Generation Z with where they're at. Additionally, these brands can also consider engaging with this generation earlier as a way to make the relationship feel more attainable over time. So this leads us to, so what? What does all of this mean for brands? And we can see throughout this discussion that there's a spectrum of love. And it's likely that your brand is going to be at different places at different times with Generation Z, but we uncovered some 4 kind of key themes to keep in mind in order to cultivate the right relationship. And so the first is get to know and grow with them. So Gen Z wants you and wants to see that you understand them on a personal level, and you're able to kind of grow your brand with them as their needs start to evolve. Secondly, pulling on Generation Z's heartstrings is a really effective strategy in order to build and cultivate deeper relationships with them. Oftentimes we see this through nostalgia is something that really connects with Gen Z. Third is to build a quality relationship. So Gen Z wants relationships built on quality. And quality was one of the aspects that we learned that was a main driver in getting Gen Z to want to establish a long-term relationship with your brand. So it's really, really key for this generation. And lastly is that Gen Z appreciates that mistakes are bound to happen, but when they do, it's really important to be transparent with them and take ownership over the situation as well as action to make it right. So with that, this concludes our second section within our presentation, and we'll go ahead and take a pause to see if there are any questions that we can help answer.
Awesome. Lauren, there was a question that was piggybacking off of the last section that we missed. So I'll go ahead and ask that one first. And that one says, how does this generation think of trade-offs between personalization, an aspect of authenticity, and privacy?
Yeah, I think that is a really, really important question. Within this research, we didn't necessarily get into the weeds of that, but I think there is an aspect of personalization and making sure that these individuals are heard, because as Cassidy mentioned earlier, this is a very diverse generation, and they definitely want to see themselves expressed within any communication or advertising, messaging, things like that. In terms of, the privacy aspect, I think that that's something that is important. But again, we would have to do probably some more research in that space to explore how, personalization and privacy are working together. But I can speak to that it is an important aspect, but making sure that personalization and that they can see themselves represented is really important to this generation.
And Lauren, I will kind of like going off of that a little bit. In the next section, we'll get into it a little bit more, but we learned a lot about how Gen Z really likes to take time to research specific topics. And I think that kind of speaks to that, both aspects of personalization and privacy. You know, they are a little bit skeptical of things, but once they find something that really hits on an area that they're interested in or a topic that they're interested in, they'll kind of dive in deeper on their own terms. So I think that we'll kind of get into that a little bit more, and that might help kind of clarify how personalization and privacy kind of play a role in what Gen Z engages with.
Great point.
All right, another question piggybacking off of that topic. It says, what is the importance of increased diversity? Is it simply to have more diverse faces in communications? Is there something deeper? For example, do they have different needs?
Yeah, so I think diversity is especially important with this generation because they have grown up with a more diverse pool of friends, of friends who maybe they haven't even met. So on social media, their networks are just a lot broader than what we've seen in the past. And so I think to them, it's really crucial to have a lot of representation across the board in order to kind of see all that they see expressed, and it makes it more relatable and allows it to be, it can resonate with this generation a bit more when they can see their reality really shine through. Anything else to add on that, Cassidy? Sorry, go ahead.
I think the only other thing that I would add, and again, we'll kind of maybe get into this a little bit more in the third section, is just it's not necessarily like a specific look, but maybe just like a feeling or like, I guess, a thought process that an individual as part of Gen Z that they can see kind of reflective of their own thoughts and opinions and feelings as well, that kind of pulls into that diversity as well.
Great. And then the last question here is, can you explain what a quality relationship is beyond brand name?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we say quality, we also mean in the products that a brand is putting out there. Additionally, I think quality can also mean the relationship that you have with these individuals and really understanding them and understanding their needs, their wants, how they grew up, and having this perception, having this lens as you try to target these individuals, I think is important in what that quality relationship is and what it can be moving forward.
Great. I think those are all of the questions for now, Lauren.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, we will keep tracking through here.
Thanks. So this kind of leads us to our last section on how to best communicate with Generation Z. So now that we kind of know a little bit more about what Gen Z looks for when entering a relationship with brands, what should brands kind of keep in mind when they're in a relationship with Gen Z? So the first thing, it should come as no surprise that Gen Z has an extremely short attention span. It's only 8 seconds, so that is not long at all. So while Gen Z might be quick to decide what content that they find to be engaging or not, they're not necessarily swift to interact with the content that they do find. So instead of delving into things immediately, Gen Z tends to use digital tools like screenshotting and save features on social media so that they're able to revisit content at a later time. The second thing is that Gen Z does not take things at face value. This is a generation that's known for curiosity. They really like to explore other points of views and also analyze information and content more critically. And then finally, what we mentioned kind of when we got into the questions a little bit is that Gen Z is a generation of researchers at heart. They are not going to necessarily immediately delve into new content that they come across, but they do possess this natural inclination to explore different topics at their convenience because they really want to validate the things that they're seeing, whether that's through additional research, reviews, videos, comments, that kind of thing. And every relationship requires communication skills. For Gen Z, they're really using a variety of different platforms on social media, and the ones that rise to the top include TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. We really liked how Gen Z went on to describe each of these different platforms in their words. So the first is that they refer to TikTok as the mini YouTube. Videos on TikTok are 30 seconds in length at a maximum, but they're still providing details, whether that's information, inspiration, sometimes it's just mindless entertainment. It's in these short, digestible, bite-sized pieces that Gen Z really looks towards. YouTube is then all about the details. This is really where Gen Z goes to look for more in-depth information on a particular topic or content. And then next, Instagram is what they consider to be the hub of social media. The reason for this is that really no matter where a video, a picture, or a comment originates, it eventually ends up back on Instagram, which makes it the hub. They described Reddit as an open dialogue. This really attracts Gen Z users who are seeking to exchange diverse perspectives on various topics. Even other platforms such as Instagram are kind of tapping into and exploring what this capability might look like with the introduction of threads. And then Snapchat. This was originally a platform that was known for playful selfies, being able to use filters, but has now evolved into a more texting alternative for Gen Z. So instead of adding new acquaintances more formally to their contacts, they'd prefer to host a more casual conversation on Snapchat to kind of have that communication. And then for Twitter, this is kind of seen as a social newsstand for Gen Z. They're using this platform to stay updated on trending topics, pop culture, and celebrities all across the world. So I'm going to take a moment now and use some Gen Z slang to talk about some of the green flags of what they're looking for when they're interacting with brands online through social media. The first green flag is that Gen Z really values transparency and they want to see an authentic side of your brand. They really want to see the process behind it as well. They appreciate this behind the scenes look at content that allows them to connect with a brand and feel like it really hits on a more personal level. And as we mentioned at the beginning, Gen Z is currently in their authenticity era, and they expect brands to interact with them on social media. By responding to messages or engaging with them in the comments, that really helps brands showcase their own personality and build a more relational connection with that generation. The next is Gen Z is really seeking out ads, posts, and reviews that incorporates individuals that they can relate to, either in terms of personality or identity. So I think this goes back to that question that we were talking through a little bit earlier of diversity and what they're looking for. I think they just want it to be relatable. They're more likely to trust and to resonate with content that's created by people who are mirroring their own experiences, if that makes sense. And then finally, adding a personal touch to Gen Z's experience can have a profound impact. Small gestures like sending a handwritten thank you note, that would really go a long way with Gen Z because it's showing a brand's commitment to investing in their relationship, and it really leaves a lasting impression with them. So we're going to go ahead and take a look through some noteworthy examples of brands that have successfully captured Gen Z's attention with their online presence. This first video that we're going to look at is from Scrub Daddy.
If you own a Scrub Daddy, it may go through some things. Things like this, or this, or this, things like this, or this, or this, or even this, and then it'll end up looking like that. But don't you throw it away, no, no, no. Instead, go to our website and join our recycling rewards program. It's pretty straightforward. Fill out the form, then pack that bad boy up and send it our way. Once we get it, we'll give you $2 in credit towards your next purchase. The Scrub Daddies get recycled to turn into alternative engineered fuel. Ooh. Join today, why not?
So Scrub Daddy has masterfully blended humor and relatability here, which is what makes their content stand out. But really where the excellence shines through is in this comment section. They're authentically engaging with their audience and they're really showcasing their brand's distinct personality. This middle comment here from Alexander Rubin just says, "What if I send you a normal sponge, huh?" And Scrub Daddy just comments directly back at that individual and says, "Crime." So the next example we're going to talk about is Wendy's, and Wendy's is one of the more well-known brands for their engagement online, as they're one of the first brands to kind of effectively engage with their audience and show personality. This brand does this by addressing its own customers and also fast food competitors with witty and realistic retorts in the comment section of their Twitter. So by casting aside a more formal approach, they're instead using sarcasm and kind of a more playful response to humanize their brand, and they're really making them more relatable to Gen Z. So these comments here kind of showcase that a little bit. So we're going to now get into some of the red flags that Gen Z is keeping an eye out for, or the warning signs that they're looking for when engaging with brands online. The first is what they refer to as content spamming. This occurs when Gen Z receives repetitive, intrusive ads or emails after just a single interaction with the brand. This overwhelming flood of communication is oftentimes perceived as a little bit clingy, and it's really going against the type of interaction that Gen Z is looking for with brands. And then the second red flag that we'll talk about,
like, I was on Instagram the other day and I got a video about, do you have back pain? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then like the next 400 ads were like, yoga stretches you can do for back pain. I'm like, I don't want to download your app. I don't care. I just thought like this was interesting. My back hurt today. Like it caught me once. Yeah, I was caught in a weak moment and then I just got destroyed by these specific ads for like. Didn't mean to go down the rabbit hole. Exactly. Yeah.
So the second red flag that we'll talk a little bit about is what's known as slacktivism. This term describes when a brand is disingenuously supporting social movements solely because it's what's popular, or other brands are also doing it at the same time. As one of the individuals in our research put it, sometimes brands during Pride Month just jump on the bandwagon when they've never supported it. It feels like they're preying on people's emotions and they don't really care about it except for when everybody else does.
All right. And then to kind of close this out, I don't think we can talk about brands without also talking about what we call the ultimate wingmate for brands, which are influencers. And so really what Gen Z, the purpose of these influencers is that these influencers are providing them with this inside information on either a particular product, brand, maybe a service, so that Gen Zers are able to make more informed purchasing decisions. So kind of to summarize this, just like in any real relationship, what your friends may say about you says a lot about who you are. And one of the roles that these influencers play in Gen Z shopping experiences is what we call experiential shopping. So rather than Gen Zers going to your brand's website and looking at all of your offerings, they would rather see your products and services in action. And so we're going to take a moment to hear from one of our consumers who we talked to about how influencers play this role in her shopping experiences.
This, she's using it as if I were experiencing it in my life. And sometimes you just need that. Like you don't want to look at a video ad at the beginning of a YouTube video all the time. You kind of just want to see someone experience it before you experience it.
So as she mentions in this video, this really immersive approach to shopping is truly powerful with Generation Z and something that they're actively searching for as they go about these purchasing decisions. So now let's dive in and explore how these influencers are going about it the right way, what's really effective in their communication strategy with Gen Z. So the first is that when it comes to these influencers, Gen Z are looking for ones that are relatable. So someone that Generation Z can truly connect with on a personal level, as well as have life experiences that are reflective of their own. It's really hard to be relatable with someone who is driving Mercedes and other things like that. They want to see real, relatable people. Which brings me to my next point, that they want to engage with influencers who are genuine and authentic in that content that they're creating. So not only does Generation Z want to see the good in their content, but they also want to see some of those little mistakes that can happen along the way, which makes it come across as more real. And then lastly, Gen Z also values being able to rely on these influencers to provide trustworthy information and holistic recommendations that they can truly count on. And so I think it's important to kind of showcase what this looks like in the wild. And so we have a couple of examples of influencers on TikTok that go about this in the right way. And so the first example we're going to look at is from a TikTok influencer. Her name is Remy. And this is how she goes about providing an authentic review for the company Zara.
Back again with a realistic Zara haul. Absolutely not, honey. What is this? No. This shirt I love. It's not too cropped. I love this neckline. No to this. I've been wanting something that's like button up and like cute, but like something about this is like from Be Not Cute. I got these cute tanks from the Limitless Contour collection. I love this nude one. It's like literally just feels like nothing's on your body. This I really like. I got one from Gap. I didn't really like it. It looked a little cheap. I don't know, wait to see what you guys say until I take the tag off this one. Wait, this can't be real. Like literally, I couldn't even get this turtleneck over my head. Like the shirt fits my body, fits my boobs, but who wears something this tight? Like this is better. It's not too tight up here. It's cropped. It's a very like thin, nice ribbed material. This is like fine, but I'm probably returning it. This is simply annoying because I got the larger size and it doesn't fit my body. I also got these and within 5 seconds my feet hurt, so I'm returning them and they're ugly.
All right, so as we can see in this content, Remy, it's evident that she is promoting what's called a Zara haul, or buying items from Zara and then doing a review on it. But I think what sets this content apart is her willingness to showcase the imperfect side of her shopping experience. So whether that was, addressing instances when the sizing wasn't quite right for her body type, or the items just aren't really her style, it allows us to connect with her on a level because we've had similar shopping experiences ourselves. Additionally, we could see that in the video, there was a brief siren that interrupted her as she was filming. And she could have easily just did a reshot or edited the sirens out, but she really embraced the moment and kept it in. And this just goes to show that real, authentic side, which makes her content less skeptical and again, just more genuine and real. Due to time, we'll refrain from playing the Get Ready With Me, but this is also a great way for influencers to really connect with their audience by showcasing how these particular products or brands are playing a role within their life. And it helps the audience connect with those products to see how they would be applicable to the audience life. And it kind of shares the journey without pushing products, which is really effective.
Let's get ready to go.
Then there's always a flip side. So what are the things to watch out for and the big no-nos when it comes to influencers? So the first is scripted content. So what this looks like is when influencers just list out core benefits or features of a product. And it's not effective because it comes across to Gen Z as forced and rehearsed. Secondly is influencers trying to attempt to persuade Gen Z to purchase products that are just completely out of scope and don't align with their practical needs or lifestyle. It communicates to Gen Z that you as a brand and you as an influencer don't truly get them. And then lastly is what we call toxic positivity. This is when influencers are excessively positive about a brand's products, which can be off-putting, inauthentic, and just turn Gen Z off to your brand. This leads us to our so what slide. What does this mean for brands moving forward? So the first is that reviews matter. So it's crucial to recognize that having both positive reviews and negative reviews hold significance with Generation Z. This generation, again, is all about valuing transparency and honesty and showcasing your true self. And then secondly, make it make sense. So what we mean by this is when you go about choosing influencers to partner with your brand, it's important to be intentional and selective, and ensuring that your brands, personal brands and values are also aligning with that influencers. And then lastly, it's important to just be you. So Gen Z is seeking these meaningful, impactful connections. Therefore, they want to see the picture perfect Instagram side of your brand, but they also want to see those little imperfections and nuances that help bring your personality or help make your personality shine through, is what they're really looking for. So with that, we are just so thankful for your more than 8 seconds of attention today. And we hope that some of this information shines a lot of light on who Generation Z is beyond the filter and can help formulate those deeper connections with this generation as you move forward with your brand. But thank you so much again for your time. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Allison, did we have any other questions? We might have 1 minute or so for one more question.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. The first one being, how can a brand evolve with their audience over time?
Ooh. Yeah, I think that's a great question and something we definitely dove into a little bit throughout this research. I think a great example is actually the company Sunny D. So Sunny D, for those who don't know, is kind of a childhood staple for Generation Z. It was something that they often, drank on the playground, enjoyed during the summertime. And there's a lot of nostalgic memories behind this brand from a young age. So probably when Cassidy and I were 5 or so, we were enjoying a Sunny D or two. But then I believe recently in March of 2023, Sunny D came out with a Sunny D seltzer. And so I think that that is a great example of how, Cassie and I probably grew out of drinking an occasional Sunny D as we grew up and as our needs were starting to evolve. But then now that we're in our current state, and I'm sure Cassie and I both being around the age of 25, we enjoy an alcoholic beverage from time to time. So Sunny D being able to come out with something that is nostalgic while also meeting our needs kind of reopened that relationship with members of Gen Z. So I think that's a great example of how a brand was serving a particular need and then evolved in order to meet new needs down the line. So great question. Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, I think we are at that 2 o'clock mark. We just thank everyone so much for their time today and hope that this helped enlighten some things on Generation Z.